Welcome to the Road to 100 Million in Real Estate podcast, where you'll benefit from the opportunity to learn to become a skillful real estate investor. You'll get guidance from top industry producers, operators, and investors who are eager to help you learn from their proven strategies of success. Now to your host, Dorrance Constant.
Hey, welcome everyone to another episode of the Road to $100 Million in Real Estate podcast. I'm your host, Dorrance Constant. I've got another special guest on the show today. I've got Marc Weisi. Marc, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dorrance. It's such a pleasure.
Super excited to have you on and hear more about your journey. And before we jump right into it, Marc, I want to give folks a little heads up about you. Folks, Marc is a municipal bond portfolio manager and trader on a team responsible for the management of over $26 billion, assets under management. But he's also a leader at Maple Capital Partners and has invested in over 500 doors, totaling over $10 million while working a full-time job. Marc, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me again. Looking forward to it.
All right, Marc, man, you're doing some incredible things. You're investing in real estate, but you're maintaining a full-time job, man. That's got to be something serious to be able to manage over $26 billion plus, being a leader at, Maple Capital Partners. I'd love to hear what inspired you to be doing what you're doing right now on both ends.
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate that. I'm by no means kind of, special in any way. Many people have done it before, and a lot of those folks I've been fortunate to know and have definitely cherry picked some strategies in terms of doing both. But in terms of kind of what led to this, where we're at presently, I think a lot of it traces back to childhood. Coming up, my father's an immigrant to this country. He met my mother in the 80s. They had me. And so having, a lot of folks that come from the immigrant background and they have that way of viewing the world. For a lot of them, it's entrepreneurship is kind of inherent. The idea of starting a business and doing everything you can to make sure that business is successful and, leaving something to your kids to be able to, take it even further than you are. That was very much part of my upbringing, where my father was a truck driver growing up, saw him, on the road, really, 80 to 90% of my childhood, and saw the sacrifices that he was willing to make. Now, of course, also as a child of immigrants, sometimes you get steered towards, hey, get the comfortable, successful quote unquote job in corporate America, get a healthy paycheck and go the safe route, which there's definitely merits to that as well. Kind of was exposed to both of those things. And certainly as I started working in corporate America, I had some kind of formative experiences that really made me think about, okay, this is great. I've got a healthy income and things like that. I've got a bunch of benefits that maybe, my father didn't have access to, but where do I want to maybe make the step forward? And how do I want to make sure that I'm leaving legacy for my kids one day that they can be even, further along than I am. And so, looked at a bunch of different avenues for doing that. I mean, a lot of us are exposed to things like 401k, mutual funds, all these different vehicles. But ultimately, I kind of settled or stumbled upon real estate. I bought a condo and started renting out one bedroom in that condo back in 2016. Didn't know about house hacking, didn't know about that as a strategy. Was just kind of made sense to me that I would offset my mortgage and kind of got started there.
Okay, so it sounds like you started with real estate, and you said you started with a condo, right? And you mentioned house hacking. So what did that actually look like? Was there a strategy in mind to start at a specific area, and it became, what you're going? So help us understand what that journey looked like.
Yeah, for sure. So I got exposed to real estate as an asset class really through the little purple Bible, as I call it. So Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And, it made a lot of sense to me, all the different benefits you get from real estate. There's the cash flow, there's the appreciation, there's the loan pay down and all of the various tax benefits that you get from owning real estate. So I was like, okay, this is great. I was already exposed to public markets by working, as virtue of working at a bank. So I figured, let me diversify myself a little bit here. And so, bought the condo thinking that I would live in it, but it would also give me exposure to real estate. Started doing the house hacking because, again, I had an extra bedroom. I'm not using it. Might as well. And so rented it out to a friend at the time. And that gave me a firsthand view into landlording light, basically.
Gotcha. And so how did that transition from, you having a condo and why did that transition as well into Maple?
Yeah, great question. So it didn't happen overnight. It started off by me saying, okay, well, I'd like to do more of this. And so I bought another condo, struggled there a lot, had a lot of seminars early on in
Hmm.
terms of learning, some obstacles we encountered. And then I met my partner, and he was looking to do many of the same things. He had a young family, two young girls, and his wife, and he was looking to provide, basically an alternative for them as well to be able to kind of safeguard their lifestyle. And so we partnered on a duplex together, and that's what opened my mind towards kind of going bigger. Was okay, we can do a condo, we can do a duplex. With each kind of step up, we gained a little bit more confidence. And then we started learning about, okay, how do we take this and how do we scale this? How do we supercharge this? Because, by doing duplexes one a year was our goal in the beginning, it would take us X number of years. So how do we shortcut that and cut that time down?
So, okay. So what you mentioned seminars. I know you mentioned that that's kind of your term. Would you give the audience what is a seminar to you?
Yeah, so I got to admit that I stole this from Rod Cleef, another popular, a thought leader in this space, somebody that I've definitely learned a lot from through his podcast. And seminar, I mean, the way I define it, the way I think he defines it is, it's a time that you encounter an obstacle that kind of forces you to grow. So some people would call them losses, some people say L's, some people say failures, but I choose not to view them that way. They're really, it's all feedback. It's all opportunities for you to get better. And so I encountered a couple of those and still encounter those every day in what we're currently doing. But it's, I look at it now as a gift, as an opportunity to get better.
No, I love how you're using that, right? A lot of times it's how we look at things, not what happens to us, it's how we react to it. And so these are the things that we actually learn from, right? It's interesting. Something that may look or seem as a failure to us in a moment may be that issue or that problem that came in forward in our life that we needed to propel us to the next level. So I love the term that you're using as seminar, because that way we're not necessarily getting down on ourselves, but thinking, hey, what did I learn from that and what propelled me to that next level, right?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, how many podcasts have we all kind of listened to where there's this hero's journey where somebody, starts off very ambitious, taking a lot of action, and they have a really rough time of it. Maybe, they lose it all and then they come back and they grow it, larger than in their wildest dreams. And it's because they chose to view it, like you said, through this prism of, okay, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The universe is teaching me a lesson here. I'm going to use this as tuition to then become even bigger than I was before.
Love it. Love it. So now that we've got the idea of the seminar out of the way, I want to hear what were some of the seminars that you had to listen in, go through that kind of motivated you to transition from, the duplex to the large multifamily?
Yeah. So one of them was I thought I had to do everything on my own. So I had that mentality of I'm going to take care of, the property management. I'm going to do the bookkeeping. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And what I realized was it's a lot for one person to take on, and you can't be great at any of them. And there were certain things that I thought I had a proclivity towards. I thought I was good at. I really enjoyed, and there were other things that I, really didn't enjoy. And so, I guess taking a step back and saying, okay, this doesn't have to be hard. What would it look like if it were easy? And so that's where I approached my partner at the time. We started to bring on other partners or service partners, people like bookkeepers, people like third-party property managers, all these different team members that we started to employ in our favor, in our team.
Gotcha. So you were able to really look at this as a team sport versus, hey, I've got to do one, which is can be tough sometimes, right? When you're really smart, you're really sharp, maybe you've got a job, especially, and you're used to just looking at all tasks like they're all on me. But looking at the entrepreneurial world is a bit different, right? It's not about, hey, I can do all things. It's like, hey, how can I partner so I can get something amazing accomplished? And another thing too, right? When you're working as an entrepreneur, making certain that the pie is big enough, right? So that you can involve some of the best and brightest to be able to help you achieve that bigger goal, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the old who not how kind of approach. And so that was one of our conclusions was let's go bigger because now we can afford to have these folks on our team if we're looking at bigger projects. The other, I would say, seminar that we learned early on was, frankly, your biggest risk or your biggest source of growth in your business is your clients, your residents. And so, we saw that with a duplex, while it's better than a condo or a single family that we were doing prior, you're still exposed. If you have one person move out, you're now at 50% occupied. And so the more units you have, the more protected in essence. And, me with my financial background, diversification is always kind of first and foremost in my mind, managing risk. And so the more units you have under one roof, so to speak, the less risk or less exposed you are to a single tenant moving out and, putting your investment in disarray.
Absolutely. So you saw that, the risk in the innate risk of having too many eggs in one basket, right? So, okay, now it's time to scale. So how do you then, scale and start going into bigger deals? Help us see what those steps were.
We joined a coaching program at the time. We were going to a bunch of different meetups, and we settled on one meetup where we were really connected with the guy who was running it. And it just so happened that he was starting up a coaching program. He was a local guy. And so, we had been going to his meetups for a while and really, thought that we could learn a ton from him. And so we joined his coaching program, and, we got to see, we were fortunate enough to be at some point, brought into a couple of his deals where we helped him raise some capital, do some investor relations, things like that. And that really exposed us to, okay, this is how these larger deals are done. These are the mechanics of it, as well as, I think, even more important than the mechanics, this is the mindset. This is the confidence that we need to kind of move forward. Because, you can read a lot about this stuff in books and, you can hear about people's firsthand experiences. But I think the confidence is going to be where you take it from, okay, I'm going to, try to analyze this and, do everything I can to see if this is a good market or this is a good deal, to, okay, let me make an offer. Let me actually step out of my comfort zone and actually move forward with the project.
What was your first project, and what are some of the projects you're working on now?
Yeah, so the first one that we did was a 32 unit. It was out of state. It was I would say a C-class property in a B-class area. It was right on the path of progress there in one of our main markets. And it was, I would say mediocre, kind of mid-level value add. There wasn't, a big structural issue, but there were definitely some thorny issues with the property itself that we had to get around in terms of, deferred maintenance and whatnot. So my partner, being that he comes from the civil engineering and kind of the construction world, he felt confident that we could add value there. That we could, really, improve the property as well as the quality of life for a lot of the tenants there. And we felt like there was some pretty good upside there. So we decided at that point to partner with a couple of other folks that we had built relationships with in the space and that were at similar levels as us. And we dove into it and started to, do our due diligence, started to raise capital and put the project together. Awesome.
What were the results of some of that project?
Yeah, so today it's a stabilized deal. We acquired it in 2021, kind of mid 2021. We, as with a lot of people who bought anything in that time period, we've been, really surprised by the amount of rent, upside that we've been able to be a beneficiary of. And a lot of that, we can't take credit for a lot of that. A lot of that is market driven, but, it did build the confidence early on to say, okay, we can do this,
Fantastic. Now, Marc, you're doing all of this while working a full-time job, and I know some people are either one, amazed by it, or two, probably inspired by it, right? How are you doing that? How are you managing your time? Would you give us some ideas of the maybe tips, or even strategies that you're doing to manage your time, get things accomplished while still maintaining, or even thriving in your current W-2?
Yeah, for sure. I think, it comes down to being strategic. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. We all have to sleep. We all have to eat. So we're all dealing, in a certain level playing field. And so I think one of the things that I did early on was look at others who were doing the same, had either transitioned out of a W-2 or were still working their W-2 while doing this. And I would say that the first thing is you have to have a belief that it's possible, that, you don't need to necessarily be leaving your job first thing, as soon as you learn about multifamily. In fact, I would caution people against doing that because.
And why would you caution that?
Yeah, because I think if you're not properly prepared and you're not in a financial position to be able to do this, you may make some suboptimal decisions. When you're pressured to have to do a deal in order to, keep your same livelihood, I think that leads to, a lot of biases in terms of, what you're willing to kind of take on in terms of projects. So I would say don't do that. get the experience, build the confidence, get it to a point where you can, you see the runway in terms of your company's growth, and also where you have the financial stability that you can afford to walk away. I think that's the most important thing, is when you're doing specifically, joint ventures and syndications where you have other people's money involved, you always want to have a sound rationale for doing these deals. You don't want anything with your personal situation kind of weighing into whether or not you do a deal. You don't want to be in a position where you have to do a deal, in other words.
Right. Okay. So that's one. You've got to first really see it. You've got to believe it, that you can actually get this. So now we've got the belief. All right, yeah. We can do it. What are some of the next steps you suggest? For sure. So I think being strategic about it, the way I approached it was I tried to look at my work week and schedule times for just planning, right? Sharpening the axe. For me, it's about looking at the next 7 days and putting a plan in place where, I know what my goals are for the next 7 days. I'm going to prioritize these things. And I don't care if I have to wake up earlier, I have to set aside lunchtime, I have to maybe at night, do some work. While we all have, very demanding jobs, I think, all of us, if we're really honest with ourselves, can carve off, 1 to 2 hours per day to actually do something if this truly matters to you, if you want this. And maybe that's a part of the original, getting your mindset right is, do you really want to be an active operator? Because there's a lot that's involved, as you're aware here. A lot of it is not the sexy, closing a massive deal and all of this stuff. So, getting honest with yourself there, and then, planning out your week. I have a planner that I keep that I update on a daily basis. I'll look at, these are the 2 to 3 things that I have to absolutely get done no matter what else comes my way. And then at the end of the week, I'll revisit, okay, was I able to complete the tasks that I set out for myself? Where am I tracking versus that? What got in my way? And maybe a strategy for kind of going forward, how I can avoid falling victim to the whirlwind that we all have in our lives. So that's one thing, planning. Okay, so you're out there planning. What happens when, hey, I don't get this accomplished? I'm feeling overwhelmed at work. Maybe I'm not getting all my things accomplished, but I've still got this responsibility to my partners, and I've got the responsibility to my shareholders, my investors, et cetera. What do you do then, Mark?
Yeah, so I typically approach it, and I know there are others out here that have, a bunch of really cool, catchy ways of putting this, but I look at it like DAD, like dad. So there's delegate. So you find somebody on your team, or maybe an extended team member, like a virtual assistant or somebody along those lines that can take on some responsibilities. That's the first and probably lowest hanging fruit. I would say the next one is automate. So if there's a way to automate, especially with today's technology and ChatGPT and all these other tools out there that you have at your beck and call, there are a lot of tasks that can be automated or batched, and I would look to do that. And then the last one is really like delete. So get rid of it. Is it something that you really have to be doing? Is it both urgent and important that you have to get it done? So, I try to look at all the different things I set out for myself in the beginning of the week and say, okay, what can I take off my plate? And then approach it in one of those 3 ways.
Love it. That I love that the acronym DAD, right? Love it. So thanks for sharing that, Mark. Really appreciate it. So, Mark, we're coming down to the end of our show. I'm sure folks are going to want to know, is there anything that you're working on that you're excited about, that you feel like our audience should know about?
Yeah, so right now we're using this time. I mean, honestly, we're in a funny, interesting time in the market, and so deal flow has been, I would say, relatively slower than maybe the past couple of years here. So we're taking the time to really strengthen a lot of our operations, as well as have a lot of conversations with our broker relationships and our investor base. So kind of making sure that we're running the ship tightly. So for the current assets that we have, really focusing on how can we drive value in those assets, and provide as much, in terms of our investor experience, as well as, frankly, our resident experience, which it all comes down to that, focusing on those items, as well as, like I said, really staying in front of our brokers, because while we're not seeing that many deals that really come close to penciling right now in our opinions, in our markets, they're going to be there. And I have no doubt that the next 6 to 12 months is going to be a real time for opportunity. I think it's going to come down to, do you have the confidence of the brokers in your market to be able to get awarded the deal, or even shown the deal for that matter? So having a lot of those conversations, talking to our lenders as well, it's a shifting landscape in terms of capital markets. So having a lot of those conversations. I guess if I could summarize it all, working on the business as opposed to in the business.
Awesome. if you had a magic wand, you could wave that magic wand and change one thing in your business, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say start to bring on team members earlier, start to partner earlier, or start to outsource some of the stuff that I was doing earlier. Your life just becomes a lot easier and actually becomes a lot more fun when you're doing things that you actually enjoy, that you're good at. So focusing on those items, kind of the Pareto principle, the 80-20, the 20% that really moves the needle, and then kind of, handing off the remaining 80% to others who are maybe better at it than you are even.
Awesome. And you've dropped a lot of gems today, Marc. I'm sure our folks are going to really want to reach out to you. What are the best ways to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my email is Marc, MARC, at investwithmaple.com. So it's maple like the tree. Our website is the same name, so investwithmaple.com. You can also find me on social media. So Instagram, Marc, MARC _Weisi, WEISI, or on Facebook as the same name, Marc Weisi, my name.
All right, awesome, Marc. It's really been a pleasure having you on the show today and learning more about your journey. Super inspiring hearing how you, immigrant family, so working where you are and now creating a legacy and generational wealth for you and your family.
Thanks for having me, Doris. It was a lot of fun.
All right.
We trust that you enjoyed today's show. Visit archcapital.ventures to learn more about how you can leverage real estate investing to improve your life through passive income, financial freedom, and generational wealth.